Take Me to the Stars by Iriswests. Chapter 1, Pablo Picasso. Listen, Isaac likes working at the Science Museum. He does. He'd be stupid if he didn't, like Chris Schistad, who only works here for the paycheck and presumably to flirt with every single one of his co-workers. Isaac would be miserable if he had to walk a mile in Chris's shoes, not just because they look pretentious and uncomfortable, but because he cannot imagine having to come into a job you don't particularly enjoy and then having to clean piss off an exhibit. This happens more often than you'd think. Like, listen, he gets it. It's an interactive museum, so of course parents bring their kids whenever possible, because Isaac imagines having an hour or two to themselves while their kids entertain themselves with the turntables or the kaleidoscope or the air rockets must be heaven for them. Their kids will run around in an enclosed space with security guards standing at every entrance and exit, and hey, if they're somehow still kidnapped, he's sure they wouldn't get too far before a parent notices. It's fine. They're fine. But when your child pisses in the stream table in front of multiple eyewitnesses that can confirm this, by the way, Isaac would hope you'd take responsibility like a grown-ass woman and let someone know before the water turns yellow. And Isaac has parents complaining to him while he's trying to teach children how to work the wind column. And Jesus, he can't hear the end of it from other concerned parents whose children have probably pissed elsewhere in the museum. How is Isaac to know? Apparently no one wants to teach their children to take responsibility for their own actions nowadays. So he's draining the stream and disinfecting the exhibit and listening to the parents complain about this while he's doing this, and he likes the museum. He does. But oh my God, he hates days like this one. Isaac can probably chalk it up to his feet hurting, or maybe to the fact that he's not working the space exhibit, which he's far more comfortable with, considering he's majoring in astronomy and enjoys the darkness of the room, illuminated only by the walls that project constellations and drones and, well, space in general. He's good at that. It's why he wanted to work here in the first place. So you can chalk it up to his discomfort, to working on the main floor instead of the space exhibit, or hell, he'd take the front desk over this bullshit. Or maybe even to the smell of piss and disinfectant, doing no favors to his stomach, but whatever it is, he's frustrated enough to want to scream at one of the parents to keep complaining about this as if he weren't already taking care of the unfortunate incident. But Isaac is good at grinning and bearing it, and when he's done, he even manages to offer the parent a smile and an upbeat all done before marching past them and swearing up and down he's never going to look in their uptight, pretentious, ludicrous faces ever. Hey, Isaac! Isaac halts where he's been storming towards the employee break room to comfortably kick a chair or something. Maybe scream into a pillow, you know? Normal things like that. But instead, he turns to find Julia and Dal behind him, grinning brightly, looking shiny and new, and like he just clocked in. Because don't they all look enthusiastic and ready for the day when they first come in? Isaac sighs, but he offers Julian a wan smile. Hi, Julian, he greets in return. Are you just getting in? He already knows the answer, but he still allows Julian to reply as if this were new information to him. Yeah, he nods. He tilts his head. You? Isaac blinks at him blankly, then looks down at himself. Uniform wrinkled, shoes dirtied, hair probably a mess at this point, considering Isaac never actually brushes it anyway. So after a sweaty shift, it must look like he's just walked through the Sahara Desert, and then looks back at Julian, a little disbelieving. No, he replies, but his voice manages to sound amused. No, Julian, my shift is about to be over, because somehow the universe has granted me one thing to be happy about today. See? The end of my shift. Julian's expression turns sympathetic. Rough one, huh? Isaac sighs a pitiful laugh. Someone peed in the stream again. Again? Again! Isaac throws his hands up in defeat. How does no one notice a child literally pulling his stick out to pee in the water? What kind of parents would raise such a monster? He shakes his head. Julian, were they just a tiny bit older, they'd be arrested for public indecency. And listen. He takes a step towards Julian, whose face begins to flush. Most likely from a second-hand embarrassment, Isaac thinks. I would be so happy to see them leave in a cop car and never return to this place. Julian raises both his eyebrows, his expression now amused. Isaac, you can't just tell Eskiel, he points out. He can't ban these kids and their parents. Right, well, he's aware, but he doesn't actually hate the kids that much. Sure, he's tired and frustrated and ready to pass the fuck out, and he really wishes kids wouldn't piss so much in here, at least not while he's on shift. But Isaac also doesn't think it's fair that the kids miss out on fun educational experience just because their parents are failures and don't know how to raise them properly. He knows the feeling all too well. So he shrugs his shoulders and shakes his head, tries to wave it off, pretend like he didn't just turn into a jaded and vaguely threatening asshole for a minute there. Nah, it's not that bad, he lies. It's just been a long shift. Isaac steps back, and when Julian exhales, it's almost in relief. And wow, okay, Isaac must have really come off as an asshole, one that looked ready to punch the next person he saw in the face or something, because Julian looks like he's out of the danger zone once Isaac's no longer in his face. He offers Julian a grimace. Sorry, he apologizes tiredly. I promise I won't get in your face like that again. Julian blinks in surprise, then shakes his head profusely. Don't be ridiculous, Isaac. You can get in my face anytime. He pauses. Then his face turns red again. What I mean is, you know that you can. I'm here to listen to you rant, because I share your frustrations and your experiences, so not that I want you near my face or anything. Truthfully, Isaac stopped listening after Don't Be Ridiculous, because that's as far as his attention span is willing to stretch for him at the moment. So he's unaware he's interrupting Julian when he says, Hey, listen, I'm gonna go to the break room and try not to scream too loudly before I get to clock out in 15. Are you gonna be okay here? Julian looks like he absolutely hates himself, and Isaac can relate, really. He'd feel that way too if he had to close tonight. Yeah, he nods. Have a good quiet scream? Isaac smirks. Thanks. He reaches to pat Julian on the shoulder awkwardly. Have a good shift, all right, he sighs. At least a better one than I had. Julian stares at his shoulder for a moment. Then he turns back to Isaac and offers him a smile. Sure, Isaac, he nods. Thanks. Isaac salutes him with one hand as he walks backwards towards the front desk. Adios, amigo, he calls out, then turns to face forward again and walks quickly and with purpose to his only safe haven in this place. Apart from the space exhibit, of course. The universe, however, seems to think Isaac does not deserve any more favors than the last 15 minutes of his shift, because he's suddenly stopping abruptly in order to avoid running face first into Eskiel. Eskiel raises an eyebrow. I didn't know you knew Spanish, he smirks. A man of many talents, my dear. Isaac rolls his eyes. Please don't make me go back out there, he pleads. Listen, I only have 15 minutes left and I haven't taken my break, so all I want to do is scream into one of the dirty pillows in the break room before I take my leave. Eskiel frowns. Our break room pillows are not dirty, he scoffs, crossing his arms over his chest and throwing Isaac an offended look. They're practically new, Isaac. Isaac stares at him, waiting for the punchline, but Eskiel does nothing but stare at him, obviously affronted, and so Isaac shakes his head. Wait, are you serious? Of course I'm serious. Didn't we buy them like a year ago? Isaac blinks. No, Eskiel, you've had those pillows way before I was hired. He reminds him, like, way before. Eskiel's brows furrow. Huh, he breathes out pensively. I could have sworn I spent company money on new pillows. Isaac watches as Eskiel's expressions take turns painting his face, until finally Isaac sighs, loudly and irritably. Eskiel snaps his fingers in triumph. Silverware, he tells Isaac. I spent that money on new silverware. Sure, Isaac grants him. Can I please take my break now? Isaac, don't be ridiculous. Eskiel rolls his eyes, and Isaac's stomach nearly drops to his feet. You can clock out. I'm not going to make you stay for 10 extra minutes if all you're going to do is take a break. Isaac grins brightly and gratefully at Eskiel because, well, Isaac likes to act like Eskiel's the worst, but really, Isaac is as fond of him as everyone else here is when he's the manager on duty. They can all rely on him, on the fact that he won't overwork them, on the fact that he'll be sympathetic to their problems and their frustrations and their exhaustion. Isaac will never admit this, not out loud, but sometimes he thinks about inviting Eskil to parties, knowing fully well he'd be a great addition to them. But he's been told multiple times during company training that they're not to party with their bosses, lest they want to be fired when confronted with proof. Still, Eskil would probably make a great friend out of the museum, and at the moment Isaac is seriously considering giving him a hug before he sprints for the door, but he manages to suppress the urge and instead clasps his hands together in gratitude and glee. "You're the best," he tells them, and Eskil sniffs and wipes his hands on his vest, preening. "I know," he flicks at Isaac's shoulder. "Now go before I change my mind and make you cover for Chris." "You literally threaten everyone with that." "I just don't want him to come in, okay?" Eskil narrows his eyes and pouts, distaste clear on his expression. "I think he comes in high every shift." Isaac squirms. Doesn't mention he's done that a couple of times before too, but he also knows that's not entirely the problem Eskil has with Chris. Chris is a serial flirt and a lazy employee who makes the manager's jobs extremely difficult as far as he's been told, but he's never done anything to merit firing, at least not legal firing, since they've never actually had solid proof Chris is high when he comes into work. Honestly, Isaac thinks Chris is just naturally spacey, and yeah, he probably always walks it slow. Maybe he thinks it's swagger. What the hell does Isaac know? And truth be told, Isaac doesn't think Chris would know shit about wrongful termination, would probably accept any bullshit excuse the managers gave him for firing him. But he also knows these managers have way too much integrity to go down that road, so they're stuck with Chris for the foreseeable future, he's afraid. But wow, he doesn't want to bum Eskil out when the guy's literally just given him an out on his shitty shift. "Sorry, dude," Isaac offers a sympathetic tone. "Maybe he'll quit one day? Or he'll try to fuck one of us," Eskil smirks. "That's enough grounds to send him packing." Isaac shrugs. "I wouldn't put it past him," he admits. And he wouldn't, especially since Isaac is pretty sure Chris is an equal opportunity employer, if you catch his drift. "Anyway," Isaac waves lamely at Eskil, "I'm going now. I'm thankful I'll at least get to scream into my very own, very clean pillow." Eskil huffs. "I'll get to that," he tells Isaac. "You mark my words, Isaac Walterschen, next time you come in, you're going to find the fluffiest, prettiest, cleanest throw pillows on that couch, the best you've ever seen." Isaac's eyebrows rise. "Okay," he offers Eskil, not really caring, but appreciating the gesture anyway. "I'll see you tomorrow?" He nods. "Now shoo, my little bird, fly from the nest." Isaac rolls his eyes at Eskil's dramatics. "Bye, Eskil." "Goodbye, baby bird," Eskil calls out as Isaac walks past him and behind the front desk, pulling up the system and clocking himself out. He breathes a loud sigh of relief when it's over, feels an incredible weight lift off his shoulders, and when he walks out of the museum he feels... Alright, he still feels pretty shitty, because he's still dirty, and his feet still hurt, but at least he gets to go home now and doesn't have to spend the rest of the day pretending to care about pretentious parents, blaming him for not noticing a kid was pissing in the stream, even though he was on the far side of the museum, obviously busy with other children, and he's not a babysitter. Oh my god. He's riling himself up all over again, which is probably not a good idea, but before he can completely ignore his common sense and keep angering himself, his cell phone bursts into the default ringtone Isaac's never bothered to change. He fishes the phone out of his coat pocket after wrestling with it for a good couple of seconds, of course, because he's hopeless at everything, and when he holds it up to his face, he sees two things. One, a big fat grease mark on his glasses impairing his vision, which makes no fucking sense because he literally hasn't laid a finger on them all day. And two, Jonas' contact filling the entirety of his screen, waiting for his call to be answered. Isaac swipes his thumb over the screen and places it beside his ear. Without preamble, Isaac says, "I hate my life, Jonas." Jonas, ever their supportive friend, merely acknowledges this with a weak, sympathetic grunt. "Yeah, man, I know you always do," he points out dismissively, and alright. So Isaac kind of understands, because really, this is the only way Isaac knows how to start conversation nowadays. "Hey, I need to ask a huge favor of you tonight." Isaac reaches the tram stop while narrowing his eyes. "What is it?" he questions cautiously. Last time Jonas asked him for a favor, it involved a sack of potatoes and a washing machine, so he's not very eager to go down that road again. He'd explain what had happened, but Isaac's not really sure himself to this day. So I've got a date with this girl tonight, he starts, and Isaac is already groaning. No, he deadpans, because this is either going to involve Isaac looking after Jonas's demon cat, or her friend wants to tag along. And yep, there it is. He's going to try and coerce Isaac into a double date with some guy so clueless and codependent he can't take a hint when his friend wants to go out with a guy alone. Or, well, Isaac's aware it could be the other way around, but even then, those are signs of major codependency issues which Jonas is better off staying far, far away from. But he never listens to Isaac because he claims Isaac is too cynical to be a reliable, objective third party, which Isaac very much resents because all he is a reliable, objective third party. No, he repeats, this time a little firmer. Jonas, I'm not going to be your buffer so you can escape to the bathroom with the girl and then Isaac, Jonas interrupts. Man, I don't want to pull the lifelong best friend card here, but get Magnus to do it, he suggests as the tram pulls up to the station. He takes a couple of steps forward, anticipating the doors. You know he's been desperate to get laid. Jonas sighs loudly. He'll scare them both away, he tells Isaac, and Isaac huffs. You know this, dude. The doors to the tram open and Isaac climbs inside, finding an empty seat far from the entrance, where less people seem to travel. Listen, I love you, Jonas, but dates with guys like that, if they like me well enough, they'll want another one, and then another one, and then I'll be roped into steady dating stages, and you know I'm not about that. Jonas yawns exaggerated from the other line as Isaac takes his seat. Yeah, because you think no one is reliable and love is a fraud. Isaac scoffs. Of course I don't think love is a fraud, Jonas. Love is a science. It can't be a fraud. Isaac looks out the window as the tram picks its route back up, watching the steady blurring of the buildings beside him. But it's also not easy, and I'm not up for navigating the stupid bumps in the road. I'm too busy. Besides, Isaac adds, if the guy's desperate enough to tag along with his friend on a date, then he and Magnus will hit it off just fine. There's a pause on the other line. I hate it when you make sense, Jonas grunts, and Isaac grins triumphantly. But that doesn't make what you're saying to me any less cynical. I've been burned too many times, bro. Isaac settles lower into his seat. And once you've been burned, you're not exactly eager to jump back into the fire, are you? Stop playing with fire, dumbass, Jonas says, and Isaac laughs. Fuck you. You're okay, though? Jonas asks, and suddenly his voice is quiet. It's serious. There's something unpleasant settling in Isaac's stomach. Jonas is perhaps the only person in the world who knows Isaac's struggles as well as Isaac does. Is probably the only person in the world who's been able to deduce where his insecurities and his skepticism derives from. And it's not always agreeable knowing there's someone out there who can see past his facade, who knows enough about him inside and out to realize everything about him is a front, that behind the bravado Isaac's nothing but a scared little boy, still reeling from abandonment issues, who refuses to let himself be betrayed like that again. You don't trust people, Isaac thinks. People let you down. And so he hates it. And even though he loves Jonas and in his concern, he still cannot stand knowing there's someone out there who can dissect his words and break them down into the truth. Because that's just as bad as letting someone in and giving them the power to break you. I'm okay, Isaac replies, trying not to snap at his friend. Seriously, I'm fine. I'm just tired, my feet hurt, and I'm pretty sure I smell like piss. You do, says an old man sitting diagonal to him on the tram, leaning forward with a serious expression. Isaac scowls at him. Could you mind your own business, maybe? He snaps, and Jonas laughs, obviously having heard the exchange. The man shrugs his shoulders and turns to lean back, facing forward. Isaac huffs, offended at the fact Jonas is still laughing at him. Shut up, Jonas. Your apartment always smells like piss. That's a lie, Jonas scoffs. My cat is the cleanest cat in the country. I'm not talking about your cat, Isaac smirks. Jonas groans at the jab. Grow up, Isaac, he says, but Isaac can hear the smile on his face. You know Magnus can't aim. Isaac laughs as the tram nears a stop. Hey, I've gotta leave you, he tells Jonas. Weak, I know, Isaac agrees, happy they've moved on from Isaac's mental state. But I'm almost home and I'm ready to shower and sleep. So's that guy in the tram with you, Jonas snorts, and Isaac has the urge to flip him off, despite Jonas not being able to see him. Still, Jonas knows him well enough to know that's exactly what Isaac wants to do, so he says, Put your finger down, I'm going. Isaac laughs once. Bye, dumbass. Love you too, asshole. They hang up and the tram pulls over at his stop. Isaac makes his way through the island of the tram, gazing up at the sky, suddenly noticing dark clouds gathering above him. Yes, Isaac thinks, This is just what he needs to top an already shitty day, to be rained on his way to his apartment, because nothing can be a more welcoming sight for his roommate, a drenched, tired man smelling of piss at the front door. Eva's probably going to make him strip at the entrance before he can even make his way to the bathroom. Resigned to his fate, Isaac decides to take his time on his way to the apartment anyway. Walking any faster would not benefit his feet, would, in fact, make them hold a grudge against him, and Isaac kind of needs his feet like every day. He has to walk pretty much everywhere and pretty much all day, to the tram, to school, to the tram again, to work, to the tram, home, rinse and repeat save for the weekends, where he might only have to walk to work, depending on how Eskil sets up the schedules. Honestly, Isaac gets plenty of hours at the museum, mostly because Eskil will actively try and avoid scheduling Chris at all, which is understandable, but sometimes he wishes he had more weekends to himself. As it were, he has this weekend off, mostly because he begged Eskil not to schedule him in, so he has time to work on his stupid paper on stars and molecular clouds, which, if you're interested, is not going well, or at all for that matter, which means he could get away with not walking at all this weekend, but still. He's still got days to go before that happens, so his feet, they're gonna have to cooperate. It doesn't start raining until Isaac is about a block away from his apartment, which is lucky for him, because it only starts downright pouring once he's finally under the safety of the outdoor roof over the apartment doors. At least he's got one thing going for him. He's not wet, and Eva's probably not going to make him strip at the front door. He'll call this one a win, because he desperately needs one and it makes him feel better. He struggles with his keys for a total of 7 seconds before he finally manages to turn the knob and open the door, then struggles for another 10 seconds as he tries to remove the keys from the knob. His back hits the wall harshly with the force it takes to pull the key out of the knob, which is just part of his daily routine, really, and he scowls at the knob excusingly. Yep, we need to do something about that. Eva's voice suddenly rings behind him, and he turns around to find her sitting on the kitchen table, scrolling through her laptop. She's not looking up at him, rather staring at the screen, obviously aware of the show Isaac was making a few seconds ago anyway, which isn't surprising considering he makes a show of it every time he comes home. Isaac scowls, closing the door behind him. You mean I have to do something about that, Isaac says, knowing full well Eva won't ever take the initiative to submit a work order, which I'll probably never do because I'm always somewhere else. Eva glances up at him and smiles. I guess it's just a matter of who can get off their ass faster and do it. It's so easy, Isaac whines. You're literally online now. It would have taken you a minute and a half at most. Eva shrugs. I'm doing important things. Isaac narrows his eyes. Like what exactly? Eva grins brightly and waves him over. Come here, she demands. And Isaac might be annoyed at everything right now, but it's very, very hard to be annoyed at Eva for long. And he likes her more than he likes most people, so he dutifully drags his feet towards the kitchen table and leans down to take a look at where she's pointing at the computer screen. Her finger hovers below a picture of a young woman, blonde hair up to her shoulders, smile bright and teeth far too white to be natural, Isaac thinks, eyes a bright green. Her lips are red, but the rest of her face looks free of makeup, and she looks like one of the models Isaac pretended to like all through high school to cover up the fact that he was indeed incredibly gay. Pretty, he admits. Is she a friend? Eva eyes Isaac. No, I'm just stalking her on Facebook. Isaac raises a judgmental eyebrow towards Eva. Okay. He shakes his head. And how did you find her on Facebook to stalk? While Eva obviously considers whether or not to tell Isaac the truth, Isaac removes his coat and throws it on the couch, then takes a seat next to Eva and removes his shoes. He's surprised his feet don't cry out in relief as he does, but it's probably a near thing, considering Isaac himself exhales a relieved breath at the feeling of the air conditioning hitting his sweated socks. They're disgusting, and they should probably be removed too, but he likes Eva just enough not to put her through that. So, Isaac asks, where do you know her from? Eva sighs loudly, resigned. She came to my cash register at the store, she admits, then frowns. Do you smell like pee? Yes, Isaac replies, but how did you ask for her name? I didn't, Eva tells him. She was on the phone with a boyfriend, I think. She gestures towards the screen. William something or the other. His last name's stupid. Anyway, we didn't really talk. She said hi and thank you and have a nice day, so naturally I committed her name to memory. Eva wrinkles her nose. Oh my god, you seriously need to shower. Yes, I'm aware, Isaac rolls his eyes, but how did you find out her name if you didn't exchange more than a few words? Eva looks at him. Her credit card, duh. Isaac blinks. Eva, that's so creepy, he tells her, and Eva shrugs. Why are you like this? I don't know, Isaac. Why did you plot to break me and Jonas up in high school? Her eyebrows rise, silently judging him. Isaac rolls his eyes again, this time a lot more exaggeratedly. We're 21, Eva. Will you ever stop using that against me? Eva snorts. Of course not, she says. It's the only shitty thing you've ever done to me. I'm milking it for as long as it still bothers you. It didn't work. Semantics, Eva waves him off, turning back to her computer screen. Anyway, circling back around to the way you smell, Isaac sighs loudly and stands up. Yeah, I'm gonna go shower, he mutters, running a hand through his sweated hair. I left some panties on the shower knob, Eva calls out as Isaac makes his way over. Don't think about how they touch my lady parts when removing them. You know, I can hear the word vagina without puking, right? I'm being considerate, Eva calls out as Isaac opens the bathroom door. You're being a 12-year-old, Isaac replies. You're being a 12-year-old? Girl, I'm at least being 15, he calls back out, and he smiles when he hears Eva sloughing through the apartment. She's probably the one thing that makes him come home to this miserable excuse of an apartment worth it. Because she's always out of her room watching TV, making food, scrolling through her computer. She never locks herself away in her room the way Isaac does, and even if sometimes the music blasting from her phone is obnoxious, listening to the noise she makes ring through the apartment makes him feel infinitely less lonely. He closes the bathroom door and after removing his glasses starts stripping immediately, stupidly bringing his pants up to smell them. Isaac doesn't know what he expected, but yes, they do smell like piss, and so he throws them in the hamper Eva had pointedly set up for them in the bathroom, after telling Isaac for the 10th time to stop leaving his clothes all over the bathroom floor. When he finishes stripping himself of the rest unfortunate-smelling clothes, he pulls open the shower curtains and sighs at the red panties hanging on the shower knob. Isaac still doesn't understand why Eva does this sometimes, and Eva's never really been forthcoming about it, so he simply picks the panties up carefully with his index finger and throws them in the hamper. Eva can never know he actually has a very hard time touching women's panties because she'd hold it against him for the rest of his life, and he does not need her talking about this to strangers while she's drunk at parties. Thank you very much. His shower is long but uneventful, and when he's finished drying and brushing his teeth, he hears Eva call to him from the kitchen again. I'm in a towel, Isaac protests. Nothing I've never seen before, she points out. And well, yes, that's true. But it's not like he'd ever ask Eva for something while she's in a towel, because he's considerate. And Isaac's also worried that she'd be cold as fuck, which is incidentally what he's feeling right now. So when he opens the bathroom door to stomp over to the kitchen with a towel wrapped around his waist, he makes sure to offer Eva his most frustrated glare. What? Can you help me with this paper? Eva asks, completely bypassing his glare. She turns the computer screen over for Isaac to see, and what Isaac sees is half a page filled up in words, including Eva's byline and title. This is what you couldn't wait until I was dressed? Oh no, I guess it could have, Isaac scowls. Eva sighs. Isaac, please, you know I'm hopeless at biology, she reminds him. I was hopeless at it in high school, and I'm hopeless at it now. Why do you think I put it off for so long? It's the one course I hope my curriculum would forget about. Eva, did you think my answer was going to be different half-naked than fully clothed? Why are you still on the half-naked thing? I'm clearly over it. It's not affecting you, Isaac claims, throwing one hand up exasperately. I'm cold and uncomfortable, and I'm not over it. I'm very close to saying no now, he says petulantly. But then Eva pouts in that way that looks real and pitiful, so Isaac grunts in frustration. How long does it have to be? He asks. Eva grins sheepishly. 3,000 words? Isaac leans forward and narrows his eyes in an attempt to see the computer screen clearly, eyesight hopeless without his glasses on. Then he tries to read the word count on Eva's paper. When he does, he squawks, You have 500 words so far, Eva. So you can see why I need your help, Eva tells him very seriously. He scowls at her and turns around indignantly, marching towards his room. You're problematic, he calls out to her. You want to be successful, but you don't want to put in the work to be. So is that a yes? Eva calls out as Isaac enters his room. He peeks his head out of the doorframe. Ask me again with my clothes on, he calls back, then promptly closes the door to his room. His back presses against the door then, a loud sigh making way past his lips, the exhaustion finally hitting him full force. Class in the morning, work in the afternoon, feet crying out for mercy every single day, and a paper due at the end of the year he hasn't been able to crank out yet because of reasons he can't put his finger on. But it's hard. It's ridiculously hard, and it's about things he likes. Isaac walks towards the edge of his room and taps on Galileo's fish tank, watching him swim around happily in his fake ocean. It's not too big, not enough to disturb Isaac's room and make it uncomfortable, but Isaac thought that his fish deserved more than a miserable bowl, so he made it work. "Hi," he greets him, and predictably, Isaac gets no reply. He taps the fish tank again in acknowledgement anyway, then retreats to his dresser to fish out his boxers and his Simpsons shirt. Once he's dressed, he makes his way to the bathroom again to grab his glasses, and as he walks out, he puts them on and walks towards the kitchen where Eva awaits him, fingers laced and hands resting on the table. Isaac furrows his brows. "What? Do you feel like saying yes now?" Isaac rolls his eyes. "Sure." Eva grins. "See what I just did there with the half-naked and fully clothed thing? In psychology, it's referred to." Isaac holds up a hand to stop her. "I don't want to hear about your bullshit science, Eva," he tells her, and she gasps offended. "Why do you hate my major so much?" Isaac snorts. "I mean, I could sit here and explain it to you, but we'd be here for days." Eva flicks a pencil at him. It misses him by a thread, but it's still enough to a gap for Isaac to smirk at Eva's lack of aim. "Nice." She rolls her eyes. "Like you'd do any better. I'm the master of aim." "How many times did you hurt yourself trying to skateboard with Jonas?" Isaac scowls. "That has nothing to do with aim." Well, I thought you wanted help. Do you think consulting my athletic ability is working in your favor?" "Oh, Isaac," Eva smiles, "you'd never leave me to my own devices when I needed you anyway." Isaac raises an eyebrow challengingly. "And how would you know that?" Eva's expression softens. "It's just not who you are." The next day, immediately after class, and on his way to the tram station, Isaac's ringtone bursts through his earphones, obnoxiously interrupting his music. Isaac scowls down at it, even as Maddie's contact shows up on his screen, and he takes his time adjusting his glasses out of pettiness before he finally picks up on what could probably be the final ring. "Hello," he speaks tiredly into his earphones microphone, not dreading the conversation with Maddie, but dreading the rest of his day at work. He closes this time, and he's already exhausted at the sight of running children and is already longing for his next shift in the space exhibition. "You sound like you were just hit by a bus," is the first thing Maddie says to him, tactful as ever. "I've been up since 6 in the morning. I deserve to sound like this." Maddie acknowledges lamely. "What are you doing Friday night?" Isaac thinks. "Probably crying to my pillow." He admits, "Watch Galileo swim around while I contemplate my life until I fall asleep." "Good God, man," Maddie sounds scandalized. "Should I be worried?" Should he? It's become common practice for Isaac now to avoid going out with his friends on weekends, lest he gets extremely drunk and loses his head for the rest of the week. It's hard trying to keep up with school and work when the boys try to get him laid at every single party, and when they make sure he's never without any alcoholic beverage in hand. It's not that he doesn't enjoy it when he's there, it's just he'd rather skip the experience altogether nowadays. He doesn't mind joining them for a pregame or a kickback on their better days, so as long as he can wear his hoodie and the same jeans he wears all week when he's not at work and come back home without fearing a hangover the next day. "Nah," Isaac decides on the simpler answer. "I'm just fucking tired." "Well, listen," Maddie starts as Isaac finds his way to the tram stop. "Yusuf and the guys are having a party that night. And it's been too fucking long, It's too fucking long since you did something with all of us, so I'm not exactly inviting you so much as telling you you're going." Isaac scowls. "You're not the boss of me, Maddie. I'm the only reason you have any street cred. Jonas would resent that." "Jonas knows," Maddie scoffs. "I'm the only reason he has any street cred, too." "Why are we talking about street cred again?" "Because you owe me for that," Maddie's bullshit excuse reaches Isaac's ears like nails on a chalkboard. "Listen, I can live without it." "Can't hear you. My reception doesn't seem to cover the bullshit zone you're in." "Maddie, everyone misses you, man." Maddie switches gears to the guilt trip, which Isaac hates because it's so effective nowadays. "It's just one house party. The people there will be chill." Isaac grimaces as a tram reaches him. "Not everyone." Maddie sighs dramatically over the other line. "Dude, you don't have to talk to him. It's a big fucking house." "Knowing of his presence will be enough," Isaac sniffs indignantly. "He literally exudes pretentiousness, Maddie, all over the house." "Evan is cool, Isaac," Maddie tells him. So this is what every single one of his friends have tried to convince him of for the year Isaac has known Evan. "I don't even know why you guys dislike each other so much." Isaac battles the memory, trying to make its way to the forefront. Irrelevant. I just want to spend my Friday night in the same room with him. Can you stop being so fucking dramatic for a moment? Maddie requests, and Isaac frowns. No. You guys can't keep taking turns on what events you show up just so you can avoid each other, Maddie bypasses Isaac's petulant answer. I mean, we can try. Isaac says truthfully. It's worked well for the both of them in the past, and sure, there have been times when there's no avoiding their presence in the same place, but at least the rest of the guys make loud enough conversation so that they don't have to look at each other once. Maybe he shouldn't show up this time. He got you guys last time. It's his house. I'm not hearing the problem here. Muddy grunts in frustration. Isa climbs onto the tram when the doors open, slightly amused. It's definitely made his morning far more interesting anyway. It will make the ride home before work more eventful in any case, his nap more satisfying. Isaac, if I have to drag you to the house myself, I will, he warns. Don't be a fucking loser. I'm not a loser, Isaac scowls. You're acting like one. I was big shit in high school. Muddy laughs. And now you're a fucking nerd who can't even spare one Friday night for his friends because he fought with a guy over money? Nope. Isaac pops the pea unsurprised, and Muddy trying to guess what the tension between Isaac and Evan is really about. All of their friends take turns guessing, but they can never really pinpoint the moment they stopped getting along, which, to be fair, was not very long after they met for the first time. He takes a seat on the tram and sighs. Look, I'll go, all right? And Muddy whoops on the other line. But you can't get me drunk. Fine, whatever. I mean it, Isaac snaps. I have a paper to work on, and the hangovers you guys leave me with impair me for an entire week. Yeah, Isaac, I said fine, we won't get you drunk. We're just excited you'll be there at all. Something soft settles in Isaac at the words, but he doesn't let Muddy know. Whatever, he dismisses it forcefully. Are the girls invited? You can invite them, Muddy tells him. The more the merrier. Plus, Eva's fucking hilarious when she's drunk. Isaac scowls. Maybe I won't invite them. He hates seeing Eva in that state, really, because he's always worrying after her, knowing full well she loses all sense of herself when she's inebriated to the point of no return. He's seen both guys and girls try to take advantage of her disembodied state, and has very often forced himself to look past his own drunken haste to get her out of there and take her home safely. Eva's a big girl, Isaac, Muddy replies, as if he can hear Isaac's train of thought. She can take care of herself. Besides, he continues before Isaac can interrupt, she won't speak to you for a week if she finds out you didn't invite her to a party. Ugh, he's not wrong. Fine, whatever, I'll mention it to her, he says dismissively. Are we done? I'm almost home and I want to nap before I go to work. Muddy makes a noise. Yeah, sure, he tells Isaac. I'll text you. Yep, Isaac replies, and then the line goes dead, because Muddy and his street cred never say goodbye. When he gets home, Eva's in the kitchen making soup, and Isaac spends a full minute fighting with the doorknob. He's about to give up when the key finally gives way, pushing him backwards against the wall again. His back, so used to greeting the wall when he gets home, doesn't even hurt that much on impact this time, which he counts as a win enough to not slam the front door shut this time. Isaac, Eva calls out from the kitchen. I'm in the kitchen. Yes, I know, Isaac calls back. I can smell the soup from a mile away. Does it smell bad? Your cooking never smells bad, Eva. Isaac can't see her, but he can feel Eva preening from the kitchen, which is enough to lift at least one of the weights of his shoulders. He kicks off his shoes and drops them by the entrance, removes his coat and lays it over the back of a chair before making his way into the kitchen. Eva's standing in front of the stove, stirring the pot, several chopped vegetables lying on the cutting board beside her, and she looks over to smile largely at Isaac. Isaac leans against the door frame, raises an eyebrow at her. Have you been here all day? He asks, taking in her appearance, sweatpants and picked up hair, hanging clumsily by a loose hair tie. Isaac doesn't think she's showered yet. Eva frowns. It's 11 in the morning, she reminds him. You're the only weirdo who takes classes so early. Besides, she turns her attention back to her soup. My only class was cancelled today, so I decided to spend a couple of hours making the perfect batch of soup. Isaac smiles. Are you gonna share? Eva sighs loudly. I guess, since you helped with my paper yesterday, I can't spare a bowl. She returns to smile. How was class? Class was class, he waves it off, leaving the comment as vague as possible. Lets the burden someone else with his problems. Hey, Yusuf and the guys are throwing a party at his place Friday night. I was told to let you know about this, but Isaac holds up a finger when he sees Eva start bouncing excitedly. You don't have to. Eva scoffs. Yeah, okay, good one, she snorts. And then she pauses, as if considering this information. Wait, doesn't Evan live with Yusuf? Yes, Isaac spits bitterly. I found no way around that this time. Eva bursts out into a laugh. Oh, that's so good, she grins. Maybe you two can make friends after insulting each other's style choices? Nope, Isaac rolls his eyes. None of you are creative anymore with these guesses. Oh my god. Well, when long-lost childhood lovers was off the table, I kind of lost interest in the turmoil, Eva admits. Still, don't you think it'd be nice to, I don't know, not hate him? I don't hate him, Isaac corrects, though sometimes it definitely feels that way. He's just a nuisance. I don't know, he's been nothing but nice to me, Eva tells him, and Isaac scowls. How dare that 10-foot giraffe with a 5-foot-long neck try and steal his roommate from him? He's really sweet and funny. I seriously think you two would get along if you gave it a chance. Isaac's memory flashes with a bitter smile and an offhanded wave, and he scowls. I doubt it. Eva sighs. All right, well, I'm not here to play mediator, I guess, she grumps. Still, it'd be super cool if you both didn't make everything so fucking awkward when we all hung out together. Isaac's mouth parts in offense. Excuse me? He replies defensively. I'm perfectly civil when we hang out together. If anything, he's the one always glaring at me. That's such bullshit, Eva laughs. You two don't even look at each other. It's like you want to fill the room with tension and this, pissing contest you two are always silently engaged in, who's gonna cave and leave first? You make us sound like children. If the shoe fits, Eva smirks. Isaac narrows his eyes at her. I'm not flipping you off right now because I like you too much, he says, but just imagine that I am. Eva, on the other hand, flips him off happily. I guess I just don't like you enough. Isaac rolls his eyes and turns around. I'm gonna take a nap before work, he calls out as he walks to his room. Please don't play Gabriella on repeat for the next 3 hours. I'll try, she calls back, but I can't control what the radio plays, so... Isaac sighs as he walks inside his room and closes the door behind him. There's a bitter taste in his mouth where before there was nothing but staleness, but it's nothing new. It turns this way whenever Evan's brought up in a conversation, especially in regard to Isaac's relationship with him, because it's something that's irked Isaac for an entire year. How easily persuaded his friends are that he's something other than a pretentious asshole who thinks that just because someone criticizes something intelligently, that other person must have a stick up their ass. Isaac's not the kind of person to utilize a 5-year-old's argument, but if he were, he'd be pointing out that Evan's totally the one with a stick up his ass. He's just saying. He sits on his bed and removes his glasses, placing them gingerly on his end table. He's ready to fall asleep and stop wasting precious time thinking about the tall douchebag with his stupid eyes and his stupid lips and okay. Isaac is aware that Evan is objectively attractive, no matter which way you turn it over. But once someone's personality shines through, they're not as attractive as they once were. Isaac knows this, has learned this, and he's glad he's out of the mindset of Evan being his type. Because no, his type is definitely not pretentious art assholes. And listen, maybe if Evan's ego weren't so easily wounded, they'd probably have a much better relationship today, but as it were, Evan's ego could probably fill the Eiffel Tower to capacity and then some, so the second someone even pokes it deflates by a ridiculous amount. Isaac forces himself to lie back and lets his head hit the pillow before he rubs the bridge of his nose in frustration. This is not what he wants to be thinking about before he falls asleep, and he can usually look past the Evan situation when it's only brought up once and the conversation doesn't lead to agreeing to be in the same place at the same time. But this time, he's been brought up twice, and both times the conversation has led to an agreement to share his space and the same oxygen. Evan's presence looms over any room obnoxiously, so it's very, very hard to ignore him even if Isaac wants to. And the thing is, Isaac learned this the first time he met Evan. The boys had dragged him to an art gallery where they were showing some random paintings. Isaac didn't know. He didn't care. He just went because they promised him free booze and food. So he skipped the questions and went straight for the engagement. Which, in hindsight, might have been a bad idea and could have easily avoided this entire situation if he's looking at it objectively, but he's not, surprisingly, so it's still Evan's fault. If you look at it from the very beginning, it's maybe possible to think it was Isaac's fault, but listen, Isaac's a little hopeless when confronted with good-looking people, alright? And the boys had ditched him to find some other friends they probably liked better. So Isaac could do nothing else but stand in front of one of the paintings awkwardly. The frame holding several shapes Isaac could not exactly make out, but the colors were dark and looming, and nothing about it made any sense. And Isaac tried to make sense of it. He did. But all he saw were shades up and shades of the darkest versions of different colors, filling out every shape, and Isaac just didn't understand it. He couldn't. And Isaac hates not understanding something. That's not how his brain is supposed to work, and he hates having his intelligence insulted. And so, of course, he automatically rejects the painting and decides it's stupid, and that it's not his fault he doesn't understand it. So he already had a standing rivalry with the painting when Evan waltzed up next to him, champagne glass in hand, hair swooped backwards, and button-down shirt hugging his chest tightly. Denim jacket swung over his shoulders like he wasn't at a fucking art gallery where everyone else was dressed impeccably. It made Isaac feel a little less out of place with his messy hair and dirty glasses, dressed top to bottom with a graphic tee and his favorite jeans. No one told him he'd have to dress up, but to be fair, he probably wouldn't have anyway, as his days had turned lazy even back then, to the point where he didn't really care if he looked good or not. Still, he cared a little bit now, because Evan was... Right, well, Isaac has already come to terms with the fact that Evan is attractive, as you know, and that's mostly because Isaac can't ignore that when he first saw Evan, his breath caught in his throat as he stood next to the towering man with his stupid hair and his stupid sense of style, and who was looking pensively at the painting Isaac was currently having a silent battle with. "Do you like it?" he suddenly asked Isaac, turning to offer him a smile. And really, okay, it'd been a while. Give Isaac a break. But he had no idea how to communicate with an attractive man willingly starting a conversation with him, the douche wearing jeans and a t-shirt at an art gallery. So he refused to look over at him and instead stared far more intensely at the painting in front of him, willing for it to communicate to him exactly what it meant so he didn't sound like a complete moron. Paintings don't talk, though, so without turning to look at Evan, considering his endeavor a bust already, he'd said, "I think it's really pointless, actually." And through his peripheral, he could see Evan's eyebrows rise in surprise. "Oh," he'd smiled at Isaac. That much he can remember, almost like he was amused. And Isaac remembers trying hard not to blush, both out of offense and embarrassment, because he did not appreciate being made fun of just because he wasn't looking for meaning in pointless splashes of colors framed around the wall, the way everyone else in the room seemed to be. "Yeah," Isaac remembers clearing his throat, trying to talk past his ignorance. "Yeah, I mean, this," Isaac gestures towards the painting. "This literally doesn't mean anything. What did the artist just throw random colors together and say, yeah, that looks like something I could sell to some rich idiot? Because, I mean, if that was the objective, then good for them. It's incredibly smart. Otherwise, I think they think way too highly of themselves." The pause that hung between them should have been an indicator to Isaac, really, but instead he held his breath through it, wondering why exactly the man beside him was staying quiet for so long. He spoke up again right before the pause stretched into awkward territory. "I don't know, I think this one's different from the rest," he'd said, and Isaac finally turned to look at him, and fuck, alright, his eyes were really, really blue. He remembers Evan gesturing around the room, willing Isaac to do the same. And Isaac remembers staring uselessly at the color of Evan's eyes for a beat longer before he turned to look at the burst of colors captured inside different frames, a direct contrast with the one they were standing in front of. Isaac could make out more than shapes around him, distorted faces, buildings collapsing over each other, sunsets that illuminated the rest of the canvas. Isaac can exactly remember everything. All he can remember is that not all of them looked as pointless as his worst enemy, but he wasn't about to let the handsome man beside him know that he just proved Isaac wrong. Maybe, but that doesn't mean this entire show is any less ridiculous. Isaac had snorted for good measure, then turned back to the painting hanging in front of them. "I thought art shows had to have a common theme? Evan had humped beside him. The artist is bipolar, he had explained to Isaac, and Isaac remembers trying not to groan because, of course, the hot guy was trying hard not to scare away was friends with the artist. I think the show is meant to depict different themes rather than a common one, to reflect his inner turmoil, his racing thoughts, how nothing's ever constant inside him. Isaac can still feel his teeth biting down harshly on his bottom lip, trying to find a way out of this without also admitting defeat. Regardless, I think there are better ways of depicting an illness than taking direct influence from what fucking Pablo Picasso of all people and turning it instead into a pity art show. And right, Isaac will admit that it was definitely a problematic thing to say, considering he knows mental illness, has lived close to it for most of his life, and he understood then, as he understands now, that sometimes the way a person expresses their frustrations about their particular illness is unique and completely valid, whether or not Isaac can understand it. And he was really ready to apologize. He was. But then Magnus was walking up to them and patting Evan enthusiastically on the back. "You two met!" Isaac remembers Magnus almost bouncing out of his shoes in excitement. Isaac blinked at him in surprise, though Evan didn't look too surprised at all. "Isaac, this is Evan," Magnus gestured to the man Isaac just made himself look like an asshole in front of. "This is his show, can you believe it?" Isaac turns over in his bed now and buries his face in his pillow at the memory of the way his spine had gone cold and his face had flushed hot, embarrassment washing through him just as prominently now as it had then. He remembers Evan offering him a small smile, one that didn't exactly reach his eyes, but it was polite-ish. Sort of. Even though the rest of Evan's expression read like, "what a fucking dick," which he did not appreciate, not even a little bit, because what did he know about Isaac? So he couldn't take a little bit of criticism from an admittedly ignorant source, but you weren't going to catch Isaac owning up to that, were you? "I certainly can't," Isaac had said, voice weak. "I really wish it wasn't." Magnus had laughed boisterously, as if Isaac had just made a hilarious joke instead of admitting to the fact that he would have much rather insulted his entire show in front of someone who wasn't the fucking artist. "We've been meaning for you two to meet for forever," Magnus continued. Even though Isaac was willing for him to disappear, he was slurring his words, though, which led Isaac to believe that even if he could send him a warning glare, Magnus would definitely not be in a right enough mind to pick up on it. We kept saying, "Man, wouldn't Isaac and Evan just get along so well?" So we kept trying to get you two to meet, but one of you or both of you were always busy when you were going to show up to the same place at the same time. So today was like a miracle, an actual miracle. Oh my God. Isaac wanted the floor to swallow him whole. How Evan was managing to still look amused was beyond him. Magnus proceeded to run a hand through Evan's hair, and it took every single drop of strength Isaac had ever pretended to have not to stare in amazement at the way a string of Evan's hair softly dropped forward to his forehead. "Dude, you're really hot," Magnus blurted, and Evan laughed. "We should make out." Evan shook his head and patted Magnus on the shoulder. "Some other time, Magnus." "I'm keeping you to that," Magnus had hiccuped. Then he'd smirked at Isaac and waggled his eyebrows, not gunning for subtlety at all, clearly. "Unless someone else beats me to it first." "Oh, I doubt it," Isaac muttered, face still flushed. But Magnus hadn't seemed like he heard Isaac. Instead, he spotted Muddy on the other end of the gallery and called his name out loudly before making his way over to him, leaving Isaac with nothing but an insulted artist and a very long, very awkward silence. Isaac cleared his throat. "Listen," Evan held up a hand. "You don't need to apologize," he told Isaac, and Isaac remembers scowling bitterly at the words. "It's not everyone's cup of tea, I get it." "Well, I wasn't going to apologize," Isaac had blurted, though that was definitely what he'd been about to do, but Evan had looked so sure of himself, like he was the one in the right, because he was used to always being the one in the right. And Isaac wasn't having that, because that just inflated this guy's ego as if he needed it. He was an attractive, young white man with his own fucking art show, when he was sure everyone was going to laugh, and he'd watered down Isaac's opinion to a cup of fucking tea, when Isaac was sure his opinion was just as valid as Evan seemed to think his was. "Oh, yeah, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings or whatever, but isn't that what art shows are about, taking criticisms and opinions?" Of course, I'm not saying they're not, but you're talking like you know better than every artist and art critic in history, so I'm curious to know what makes you qualified to be. Isaac gaped. Your painting doesn't make sense. He'd crossed his arms over his chest petulantly. And for your information, I happen to know more about history than probably anyone else in this room, so just accept the opinion and go. It's not like I'll make or break whatever career you're trying to build here. Oh, I'm taking your opinion into consideration, Evan had smirked. Of course I am. I'm just not hearing an actual answer to my question. Isaac fumed, and this is the reason why he'd stuttered next, and he's sticking with that story. Art's not a real. I don't need to be a critic or an expert to know this is all. For all I know, this is just a big ploy to make you seem like deeper than you actually are or something. Or really, something in Evan's gaze dimmed. Did I also lie about being bipolar so I can earn pity points? Isaac feels guilt settle in his stomach even now. He's not proud of the way he handled the next situation. But God, Evan was purposely riling him up. Isaac knows he was. He was judging Isaac without even knowing him, already thinking he was better than him before Isaac could get a word in otherwise. No, that's not, I wasn't saying, Isaac grunted in frustration. Look, I'm not taking back what I said. I just don't think your paintings are anything to write home about. Not everyone has to like them. Evan considered Isaac for a moment, and something in his smile had turned bitter and disappointed, like he expected more of Isaac. And Isaac had hated that, because he shouldn't expect something out of someone he doesn't know, even if he acted like he did. That's just fine. I mean, I can accept that you don't like my art the same way I can accept the fact that I don't need the criticism from someone who thinks comparing my work to Pablo Picasso's is an insult. Isaac scowled. The man was a perverted pedophile who had a kid with a 17-year-old when he was 45. By then, however, Evan didn't seem interested in continuing the conversation. He turned around and was walking towards the other side of the gallery, waving Isaac off over his shoulder dismissively. Nobody's perfect, he'd called out. Then he paused and turned to look over his shoulder. His smile was tight. Nice to meet you, Isaac. And Isaac wished he could say the same, wishes even now he could. If only so they could have avoided this fucking resentment they harbored against each other altogether. But God, the memory still manages to boil Isaac's blood, amongst other things, and he can't believe his friends thought he could ever get along with someone so pretentious, so obviously enamored with himself that he couldn't look past a genuine opinion without cutting off all communication with the other person, without deciding the other person wasn't worth his time. And maybe that's the worst part about all of this, that someone out there thinks Isaac isn't worth their time, that thinks Isaac's the one with the problem when it's obvious they are. They could have been friends, maybe. Isaac's not sure, and Isaac doesn't necessarily want to know anymore. He thinks they are both stubborn, set in their ways, and Isaac can't appreciate the person that Evan is without thinking it impractical. Isaac thinks art, a form of expression of the subconscious made to be witnessed by the world, made to expect praise and consideration, is subjective, and he doesn't like the subjective. He likes objectivity, things he can explain, things he can understand. And he doesn't appreciate people who pretend to understand things that are inherently not understandable, not really. Subjectivity isn't a real thing. Things are either fact or they're not. And that's the kind of person Evan is. From what he's been able to piece together by listening every now and then to what his friends say, he doesn't really believe that things are black and white. He questions everything and seems to enjoy it. Doesn't care if he believes in things that have never been proven, believes in things that can break him easily. Isaac thinks that's ridiculous to know someone is so carefree, like he's never experienced heartbreak in his life, like he's never been let down in his life, and that's such an issue. Isaac couldn't possibly enjoy having a person so naive in his life. He already has Eva, who believes far too much in love and possibility, and he often has to take care of her more than any friend and roommate should. It reminds him of his mother, forcing her faith on Isaac, telling him never to question God, even though Isaac couldn't see him, or hear him, or feel him. Even though every time he asked a question about the Bible, he was made to read every Sunday, he never received a straight answer. Like even the people meant to be the most faithful to their religion couldn't understand what they were preaching either. No one could ever prove to Isaac that the Bible wasn't nonsense, that God was real, but his mother would sit Isaac down and make him pray anyway, and he carried that with him into high school, thought everything about him was wrong and disgusting and abominable until he learned faith wasn't real. It wasn't a science, and even though some people harbored it in them, it never did any favors to Isaac. It broke him and made him hate himself for far longer than he should have. Broke his mother when she decided it was more important to her than her own son was. And so he thinks that people who have faith in things they can't know for sure are ridiculous and are bound to end up bitter and unhappy when they are confronted with the cruel reality of the situation. So Isaac plays it safe, for his sake and for the sake of the people around him. Isaac turns over in his bed and rolls himself under the duvet, cheek pressing down on his pillow. He stares at the wall blankly, tries to ignore the unpleasant bubbles stirring in his stomach. He chalks it up to hunger, then shuts his eyes as tightly as he can, trying to force his mind to shut down, his body to sleep. He has work in a couple of hours. He doesn't have the luxury to question someone that will never be anything but a blip on his radar, someone he'll forget about in a couple of years, where all he will be is a story to tell at parties. An example when Isaac tries to prove a point. He doesn't have the time to wonder how someone so unworldly can walk around with a smile on his face without a care in the world. Isaac thinks it's stupid. He thinks Evan is stupid. He wishes he wasn't such a goddamn nuisance, a mystery. He wishes his head would stop questioning him, as if trying to figure him out. Isaac doesn't care. He doesn't. And he's really trying to convince the rest of himself of the fact, but it doesn't work. Never works. Isaac's always tried to find the fact in fiction, and to him, that's what Evan is. A work of fiction. Unrealistic. Meant for entertainment, but never to look past the surface or the first impression. Eventually, sleep does find him, but it does so begrudgingly, and it leaves him with lingering thoughts of the unexplainable and the doubts that follow after. On Friday, the boys are leading him to Yusuf's place after a pregame, where Magnus is already drunker than any of them, stumbling over air and laughing far too loudly at anything Muddy says. Isaac would be annoyed, but he's pleasantly buzzed, so it's not as irritating as it would be sober. He plans to stay at this level for the rest of the night, enough so the loud party music and annoying presence don't ruin his vibe, but not enough to ruin the rest of the week with the weight of a major hangover. Muddy had already expressed his disdain for his exposition, but Jonas managed to make him lay off, telling him one of them has to be responsible to be successful in the future, because that someone's gonna be the one they all bomb off of for years to come. This made Magnus laugh out loud on the way out of his apartment and made Muddy concede to the point, pat Isaac on the back and calling him a trooper. Isaac had rolled his eyes but didn't object, knowing full well that if his friends ever needed to bum off of him, he was helpless to turn them away. They're not far from Yusuf's house, and that's made clear to them by the loud music echoing down the street, and most likely annoying the neighbors, Isaac thinks, but it's not like they can do much about it yet. It hasn't struck midnight, which means they can't complain for another couple of hours about the noise, so they'll probably be able to enjoy the party until the police finds their way to the house and breaks it up. Isaac plans to leave before that, though, not eager to have to attest to his age, and Muddy can kiss his ass if he tries to get him to stay. Though Isaac thinks they are going to be losing Muddy first in the house, so he might not be a problem, and he tends to be able to sneak away from Jonas and Magnus once they spot an attractive someone somewhere in the house. It's very easy for them to get distracted by women, or, in Magnus' case, both women and men, which makes for a much more enjoyable party experience for Isaac, who can drink and either sulk on a couch by himself, or, on better occasions, make conversation with someone else that wasn't exactly looking to pointless hookup or eager to have a hangover the next day. The former was more plausible than the latter, objectively, but he doesn't mind. He never minds a comfortable couch, a can of beer, and good sulk. Shit, do you think Thomas will be here? Magnus slurs as they walk up the steps to the house. Like, do I look good enough for him to be here? I don't think what you look like has any bearing on whether or not he'll show up, Jonas explains, a little perplexed. And since when have you guys been hanging out? Since you took me on the date, duh. Magnus looks at Jonas as if he's grown two heads. He doesn't have to do everything with Lydia, you know. Jonas frowns. I mean, I figured, but he licks his lips. I haven't heard from Lydia since the night. Well, to be fair, she hasn't heard from you either, Magnus points out, which makes Jonas roll his eyes. Because I'm not interested, Jonas tells him, and then Muddy pipes up. Dude, then why the fuck do you care if she calls or not? Jonas shrugs. It's one thing if I'm not interested, he tells him. It's a completely different thing if she isn't, though. Like, that's really hot and also annoying. Isaac rolls his eyes. All of you are so fucking problematic, he mutters as they make their way past the lawn full of people. This is why none of you can last longer than a month in a relationship. Whoa, Maddie looks at Isaac, says the guy who hasn't dated since high school. Because I don't try to date, Isaac points out as they reach the entrance door wide open. Not because I fuck shit up with my backwards thinking like you assholes. Jonas looks sufficiently chastised. No, you're right, he agrees. That's the drunken idiot in me talking. Both sober me and higher me would be very disappointed by this. Isaac extends a hand to pat Jonas' shoulder comfortingly. The first step to recovery is admitting that you have a problem. Maddie snorts. You two are unbelievable, he says, and his voice is to get louder to shout over the music now that they're inside the house. Find yourself someone to make out with and get over it. Isaac's not going to do that, thank you very much. But he's pretty sure Jonas is, so he watches Maddie walk away from them and take his booze with him, and then he turns to Jonas to gesture with his head towards Maddie's general direction. You should go with him, he calls out over the music. I'm gonna go find a bathroom. That's not exactly true, but it's easier for Jonas to ditch him if Isaac gives him permission to first. So he doesn't feel guilty and follow Isaac around all night and not enjoy the party. It works, because Jonas nods and gives his arm a squeeze. Find me after, alright? He tells Isaac, and Isaac nods, even if he definitely won't, because by the time Isaac decides to look for him, he'll have a girl pressed to the wall and his lips will be attacking her face. High school him had to witness this countless of times, and back then it was torture. He is aware that what he felt for Jonas was something resembling romantic love, but the more he learns about just what chemicals trigger love in the brain, the more he realizes it was more of a projection, coming to terms with his sexuality and eventually realizing that the less he feels for people, the easier it is to avoid the hurt that comes with the crushing disappointment of seeing them attack other people's lips with their own. Isaac is grateful he's past all of that bullshit and that he can witness this unaffected enough to walk away and find something else to do instead of wallowing all night and engaging in the masochistic ritual of watching Jonas make out with someone else. He doesn't realize Magnus is following him towards the living room until he yells in Isaac's ear, "There's Yusef!" Isaac startles and turns back to glare at the blonde, who's waving enthusiastically to what Isaac assumes is Yusef behind him, ignoring Isaac's reaction. Dude, Isaac furrows his brows. What are you still doing here? Magnus' eyebrows rise. Is it a crime to hang out together at a party? Well, no, it's not, but Isaac's not used to Magnus sticking with him or any of the other boys during runs, so it's more than a little suspicious. When Magnus gestures towards one of Isaac's hands, Isaac realizes where he's coming from. Besides, you have booze and I do not, he points out. Isaac snorts loudly. It's because you finished yours at the pregame. Magnus pouts. So you're not gonna share? No, Isaac looks at him disbelieving. Dude, you're way too drunk right now. I'm not getting you even drunker. It's not like you're gonna finish them, Magnus points out. You're being boring and refusing to get drunk enough to have fun. Isaac rolls his eyes. I'll find someone to share them with, he tells Magnus. Someone who's sober enough to warrant them. Ugh, Magnus grunts. You're such a fucking mom sometimes. Isaac snorts. I'm leaving now, Magnus. Hey, look, Magnus points over Isaac's shoulder, completely ignoring Isaac's announcement of retrieval. It's Evan. Isaac turns around instinctively to follow Magnus's line of sight, and he's not really sure what he expected to find, but there's Evan, sulking even more pretentiously than usual at the corner of the living room. Isaac can't believe he's trying to sulk as much as Isaac does right now. What the fuck, that's his thing. Man, poor thing, Magnus speaks into his ears, and Isaac turns to glance at Magnus's pitying expression before looking back towards sulking Evan. Why? Isaac rolls his eyes. He's just trying to look mysterious by sulking in the corner. Nah, dude, Magnus says. His girlfriend, you know, Sonia? The one who's been dating for 5 years? She just called it quits with them, he says, and Isaac raises his eyebrows. He won't tell anyone why, but he's been pretty bummed out about it all week. And alright, so Isaac feels a little bad for him, but he also thinks this is his own fault for putting so much of his trust into another person, and also, what is Isaac meant to do about it? It's not like he cares enough about Evan to try and console him, and it's not like he doesn't avoid him enough so that he can bring it up in a conversation, ask if he's okay. So Isaac shrugs his shoulders and turns to look back at Magnus, patting his cheek. Go find yourself a nice person with booze nugs, he suggests, and Magnus rolls his eyes exaggeratedly, seemingly forgetting what they were talking about a second ago. You're not getting any of mine. You're a terrible friend, Magnus shouts at him as he retreats. A terrible friend, Isaac Baltaschen. Isaac waves off his accusations guiltlessly as Magnus is completely overtaken by the crowd, disappearing entirely, and then Isaac is left standing there alone, rooted to the spot. He sighs loudly, not even sure why he decided to come in the first place, then makes his way literally anywhere else, away from the people trying to sweat on his fucking shoes. This used to be his scene in high school, honestly. when he was trying really hard to like girls and to forget his grievances. But now, the atmosphere is really not his area, and the only times he enjoys loud music and sweaty people is when he's at a gay bar, and even then, he mostly just watches. The kitchen happens to be the only place not entirely swarmed by people, mostly only being used to throw empty beer cans away or on the counter and walk out, so it's a breath of fresh air and the perfect place for Isaac to sulk until he spots the last person on earth he wanted to be in the same room with. Evan's now graduated to sulking in the corner of the kitchen, long fingers wrapped around the beer can almost fucking twice, and no, Isaac doesn't stare at them for a second too long, thanks. It's fucking weird, not attractive, and you literally can't prove otherwise. He means to turn around and walk right back out of the kitchen, but Evan's caught his eye now, and Isaac might dislike him, but he also doesn't want to look like a coward and run out of there without preamble. If Evan wants to be the first to walk out, then he can feel free to be Isaac's guest, but if Evan thinks Isaac's going to be the first one to cave, then he has another thing coming for him. Taking a deep breath, Isaac makes his way over to the same part of the counter Evan's currently sulking in front of, the distance only being separated by the stove, and he settles his beer cans on top of it and, against his better judgment, takes one for himself and opens it. Call it liquid courage if you must, but he's going to stand there here in uncomfortable silence with the pretentious douchebag of his nightmares. He's going to need to be a lot more inebriated than he already is. He downs about half of it before separating his lips from the rim, then glances over at Evan, who's doing the same and pointedly avoiding Isaac's gaze. He looks positively miserable, almost like Isaac's presence can't even bother him in his state, which inexplicably irks Isaac to no end, so he does something stupid. He talks to him. "Hey," he calls out, and the music's not as loud here as it is out in the living room, but it's loud enough so that Isaac has to raise his voice a little. There are only about 4 other people in the kitchen chatting aimlessly amongst each other, so Evan looks at them first, before he turns back to Isaac as if he's surprised Isaac is acknowledging him. He visibly sighs, but that's the only way Isaac notices he does, since it's not loud enough to reach Isaac's ears. "Listen," Evan calls back, "if you're here to pick a fight, I'm not really in the mood, Isaac." Isaac scowls. "I don't always pick a fight," he says defensively, though, to be fair, he doesn't necessarily start a forced conversation with Evan in the nicest of terms. Evan communicates this fact to Isaac with a look, which Isaac only acknowledges with a roll of his eyes. Yeah, he gets it. He's always bitter about the fact that Evan pretends to know him, know his struggles, but he's also not a complete fucking asshole, right? Isaac may not understand romantic relationships, but he can understand heartbreak, and he still knows what it feels like, even after years of avoiding it altogether behind the shield he's built for himself. "Listen," Isaac says, "I'm not here to fight, okay? I heard about your girlfriend." Evan smiles bitter. "That's worse than you picking a fight," he tells Isaac. "You're actually pitying me right now." And well, yeah, Isaac raises his eyebrows. "You're telling me if I ever broke up with a boyfriend of 5 years, you wouldn't pity me too?" Evan seems to concede to the point. "Yeah," he agrees with a tilt of his head, and that's the end of the conversation. So now they're standing about 3 feet away from each other and saying absolutely nothing. The both of them grasping at their beer cans a little too tightly, unsure of what to do next. This is the longest interaction they've had in over a year that hasn't ended in insults or one of them storming off, and the only noises around them now are that of loud voices talking over each other, trying not to be drowned out by the even louder music echoing around the house. Isaac can feel the counter pulsate against his waist as he leans against it, to the rhythm of the song's bass, and then he takes another swig of his beer to try and build up the courage to say something else. "Did they throw this party to get your mind off your ex?" he asks, and yeah, he's totally nailing this being the bigger person thing right now. Isaac 2, Evan 0. Evan snorts. Yeah, he admits to Isaac, but it's not working. Isaac raises an eyebrow. "Maybe you're not trying hard enough," he tells him, since he seemed to be mildly attached to the corners tonight. Evan throws him a bitter look. "You can't possibly understand how hard it is to be on the rebound when you loved someone for so long, and then they decide to end it for good because they decided they're in love with someone else." Honestly, Isaac really feels for that guy right now. He does, and if you were to follow the right social cues, he'd probably say something like, "Hey, I'm sorry," or "Don't worry, you'll get back out there." But as it were, he's getting a little drunker than before, and also it's Evan, so instead he replies, "Yeah, of course I don't." He taps a finger against his beer can. "Because I'm not stupid enough to start a relationship when I have to focus on my studies and my career and my passions. And romantic relationships are a distraction from that. that lead to nothing but broken trusts and heartbreak. See? You. Wallowing in the kitchen corner talking to me of all people. Isaac pauses. I don't know how you willingly jumped into one like an idiot, honestly. 5 years fucking wasted because you chose to trust this girl. Evan is looking at him a little perplexed. It's called faith, Isaac. Sometimes you love someone and you have faith they'll make you happy. Isaac snorts at the words, then laughs bitterly. Yeah, that's not a thing, he tells Evan. And Evan furrows his brows. That is a thing. No, it's not, Isaac counters. It's not a science, so I don't take it as a fact. Simple as that. Evan stares at Isaac for a moment, almost like he doesn't understand Isaac at all, which is the first thing Evan's ever gotten right about Isaac. He doesn't know Isaac. Doesn't know that faith and trust have led him to nothing but disappointment, and he's smarter than that now. He's stronger because of it. But yeah, Isaac clears his throat, swerving his train of thought before he gets depressed drunk. Sorry you were an idiot who thought you could trust anyone with your love. Seriously? Evan watches as Isaac shrugs his shoulders unmoved. Why do you always find a way to insult me? He asks. I can't imagine what I did wrong that you hate me like this. I don't hate you, Isaac automatically replies, because that's his usual offense when his friends bring up the same argument. I just think you're really pretentious and very impractical. Evan snorts. Well, if that's what you think. Evan nods. The good news is that at least I'm not an uptight nerd who thinks he's better than everyone in the room just because he knows a thing or two anyone can learn from a book. Isaac glares at him, finishing the rest of his beer before he replies, Stick to your art, Evan. Insults certainly don't seem to come naturally to you. Evan stares him down for a moment, which makes Isaac have to fight back a squirm, and then he finally turns back to look forward and he downs his beer. That must be filled with more than halfway, Jesus, in less than 5 seconds. Isaac thinks that can't be healthy at all, and then Evan's reaching for another one, like the first one didn't do anything for him. He glances at Isaac, and there's a hint of smugness to his expression, and oh, fuck him if he thinks he's challenging Isaac because he's not a child, and he's not going to rise to the bait and risk a week-long hangover just to prove to Evan that he can keep up with his alcohol intake, and that he can finish all of his beers and still be less drunk than him. And then Evan downs his next beer can, and Isaac is suddenly a petulant high schooler again and reaching for another one of his own, popping it open and glaring straight at the side of Evan's face as he starts downing his own. So it turns into the stupid, silent competition between the two of them to see which one of them can drink the most without falling over. Isaac guesses, and by the time they are both on their last respective beer cans, they've moved close enough so to each other for it to be a little uncomfortable, and Isaac is flushed and dizzy, and he doesn't really think he can feel his hands. He looks down at them and realizes he's still holding on to his last can, and notices Evan's holding on to his last one too, and neither of them have exactly finished it, but Isaac thinks it's because they both might not have the coordination to try at this point. Isaac swallows and raises his gaze to meet Evan's glazed over one, and wow, Isaac didn't realize they were both standing this close together, and he thinks maybe he should take a step back. He doesn't though, instead places his beer can next to them on the counter, offering to call this a draw. Evan doesn't drink the rest of his beer, but he also doesn't put it down, and instead he tilts his head and his eyes flicker down to Isaac's lips. He says, and he's not as loud anymore, considering they are close enough to hear each other at a normal volume, but his words are definitely slurred. They definitely are. If you hadn't been such an asshole the first night we met, I probably would have taken you home and fucked you. Isaac shrugs the shiver down his spine to his alcoholic intake. No wonder you were a co-with Picasso being a fucking adult draw, he counters, and his words are also very slurred, and his mind is a little hazy. Evan rolls his eyes. See, I judge artists by their merits, not their fucking personal lives. Isaac would like to strike this opinion from the record, because it is a stupid opinion. So you were willing to cheat on your girlfriend to fuck me? Isaac snorts. Yeah, I wonder why she dumped you. Evan's eyebrow rise, not looking offended at all. What? You wouldn't have fucked me anyway? And while Isaac is really, really drunk and he wants to say no, but also he kind of wants to say yes, so he battles internally with both of these options until finally, yes, I probably would have, is the argument that wins, and well, it's out there now. It's something they've never talked about, or, well, it's something Isaac never allowed himself to bring up around Evan, not even once. He's never allowed himself a lingering glance, never allowed himself to even look at his back, lest someone figured out his attraction to Evan. He was never sure if Evan felt the same way, and he never cared, because it wouldn't have changed anything anyway. Evan's still a pretentious asshole, and Isaac can forget all about how attractive Evan is with only this fact to sustain his position. So it's pretty stupid that Isaac keeps talking really well against his point. But truth be told, it probably wouldn't have happened anyway because Isaac pauses to gather his thoughts. Because I don't fuck people that often anymore, so it's been a while, so I think I'd suck at it since, I'm trying to focus on myself. Evan's expression turns amused, and damn it, whenever his expression isn't resentful or angry or bitter, it turns 1,000 times more attractive, so fuck him, honestly. You don't just forget how to have sex, Isaac. No, Isaac snaps defensively, but you can't forget how to be good at it. Honestly, that's too much information, Isaac. You're making yourself look stupid and insecure, and this is why he hates drinking. Oh my god, it manages to blur the line between his facade and his truth, and that's so fucking dangerous. But he immediately stops thinking about that the second Evan steps closer to Isaac, looks down at him and swears, like he's seeing Isaac for the first time. Isaac wants to swallow nervously, but he thinks his mouth's gone completely dry. You haven't thought about finding out? Evan mutters and his eyes flicker to his lips. Something in his gaze darkens and his tongue darts to lick his own lips. Isaac follows the movement, annoyingly mesmerized. And then Evan doesn't do anything, the fucker, and Isaac realizes this is another challenge, and Evan wants to see Isaac back out of this first and then laugh in his face, prove that Isaac is the one not strong enough to cross the line, and fuck Evan. Isaac can hold his liquor more than he can, and he's not fucking better than Isaac just because he thinks being cultured is more important than being practical. And listen, if he thinks Isaac won't pick up with him right here now, he has another thing coming for him, buddy. So that's absolutely the only reason Isaac fists his hand around Evan's shirt and pulls him down to press his lips aggressively to Isaac's, and it's immediately hungry and fuck. Suddenly the desire Isaac had done such a good job at burrowing deep in his subconscious to never see the light of day bubbles to the surface, and that sets him on fire. Forces his hands to find Evan's hair and grip at it almost aggressively, bringing him as close as he's physically allowed, kiss all tongue and teeth. Evan drops the beer can he'd been holding on the floor and wraps his hands around Isaac to pull him closer, pressing him against his chest, but not before the beer bounces off the floor and spills unceremoniously all over Isaac's shoes and some of Isaac's jeans. They are so close together now that it's hard to pull away, but Isaac manages, after grunting against Evan's lips, and he glares at him in contempt. You just got my jeans all wet, asshole, Isaac says, managing to take a step back and collect himself, though his heart is racing against his chest and just about every other part on him refuses to be put the fuck out. Evan doesn't seem to be bothered by the fact, though. Instead, he smirks, wrapping a finger around one of Isaac's belt loops and tugging it forward, pulling Isaac closer to him in the process. Well, then I think we'd better get you out of them, Isaac's heart jumps traitorously at the implication, and really, he's totally blaming the alcohol for the way his dick jumps and interest at the words. He's drunk enough to want this so fucking badly, especially when his eyes refuse to part from Evan's swollen lips, but he's also not drunk enough so that he can't refuse, so he has a choice here. He does, and he's going to make the right one. Just watch him. Then why aren't you taking me upstairs already? Damn it. Shit. Fuck. Why is he like this? Oh, but Evan's smile is positively sinful around those lips, and they felt so fucking soft against his own, and even when Evan tasted of the same alcohol Isaac is sure he tasted of too, it was as pleasurable as charting constellations in his free time. Which is a comparison this particular asshole does not deserve, but it already happened, and his drunk self is an idiot who leans up for another kiss, but this is more of an open-mouthed brush of lips, tongue darting experimentally against Evan's bottom lip. Evan groans, and the sound makes Isaac take his fingernails into the back of his neck, which makes Evan's breath hitch in surprise, and then suddenly he's pushing Isaac away and grabbing at his wrist, tugging him out of the kitchen. Isaac's not really worried right now about who can see them pushing past people and up the stairs, clearly with intent, but he's pretty sure tomorrow he's going to be freaking out about whether or not any of their friends had seen, because then they'll start assuming, which is bad because, Isaac just really wants to fuck Evan a lot. He doesn't really want anything beyond that, and to be honest, he probably won't ever want to see his face again after this night, and he makes sure to tuck that piece of advice away for sober him to pick up when he wakes up tomorrow, because Isaac is pretty sure this is something he's going to forget about for at least a day. The temptation to do it again will probably have a lot to do with how good it is, so he's willing himself to be strong and do this quickly, And this is what he's repeating over and over in his head when Evan slams open his door, interrupting a couple already making out in his bed. Evan lets go of Isaac's wrists and scowls at the pair, snapping his fingers right in front of their faces. Out, he demands, and though the couple looks peeved, they comply, walking out of the room together. Evan follows them as they do and closes the door behind them, and suddenly Isaac is hyper aware of everything right now. The emptiness of the room, the size of the bed, his uneven breath, the way Evan's hair is tousled, and the way Isaac's half-heart in his jeans, which are now uncomfortable, and he's pretty sure they smell like beer. But then Evan meets his gaze, and Isaac's not really thinking about anything else anymore, because he's just remembering what a fucking good kisser Evan is. And Isaac doesn't know who moves first. All he knows is they meet somewhere in the middle, and their lips are suddenly biting and pulling at each other. And then Evan presses his hands behind both of Isaac's thighs, and he's hauling him upwards to wrap his legs around Evan's waist. Evan carries him to the bed, and Isaac refuses to let their lips part at any point, so Evan's attempt to drop Isaac's back on it is clumsy at best, but they still manage to pull it off without once letting their lips break apart. That's the thing too. Isaac thinks he can get off just from kissing Evan. Jesus, and to be fair, that's probably due to the alcohol in his system, but it doesn't sound like the worst thing in the world either. Evan seems to have other plans, though, if the fact that he's tugging Isaac's jeans down all of a sudden is any indication, and Isaac arcs his back to make it easier for him. Evan's lips start trailing kisses down Isaac's jaw into his neck, and Isaac gasps at the sensation, slipping his hands under Evan's shirt and digging his fingernails into his hips in what embarrassingly feels like desperation. Then he starts unbuttoning Evan's jeans and pulling them down as far as they can go. And when he can't reach with his hands anymore, he continues pulling them down with his feet, palming Evan over his boxer's briefs. Evan groans against the skin of Isaac's collarbone, and things progress pretty quickly after that. Somehow, they rid themselves of their shirts and their shoes, and the rest of the clothes getting in the way. Isaac's glasses end up thrown somewhere on the bed. He doesn't know, because all Isaac can really pay attention to now is Evan, and his mouth, his hands, the way his breath exhales and stutters, the way their thighs shave sweatily together as they move against each other, the startling shiver running up Isaac's spine when Evan's hand finds its way between them, and okay. Isaac had definitely forgotten how much he enjoyed sex. Like, really forgot. And all they're really doing so far is moving against each other, because Evan's hand wrapped around the both of them, Isaac throwing his head back and gasping his moans. It's not difficult after that. In one instance, when Isaac feels his toes clench and his body tense in preparation, Evan abruptly stops and leans away from Isaac, extending an arm towards the top drawer of his end table. "What are you doing?" Isaac snaps impatiently, irritated at the pause. "Could you fucking hurry up?" Evan pulls out condoms and lube in that order, and Isaac's stomach jumps at the sight. "Could you maybe fucking chill?" Evan counters, and Isaac can tell he's just as impatient, and he's also got to admire the fact that he remembers to practice safe sex, something that Isaac's brain really wasn't thinking about a second ago. He just kind of wanted to get off, like, immediately. He doesn't really think after that. It's a blur of pleasure and moans and gasps and pleads. Evan's name leaving Isaac's lips over and over and over again. Evan moaning Isaac's name into his mouth. Isaac's hands pinned to the mattress, and the both of them clumsily moving against each other. Isaac thrusting upwards to meet every single one of Evan's movements, and eventually, when Isaac finishes, he's not sure why it's so fucking ethereal, the sensation. Can't tell if it's because he hasn't fucked someone in so long, or if it's because he's drunk, or if it's seriously just because he's never had sex as good as he just had with Evan. But whatever it is, whatever the reason, Isaac feels it up his spine, down his toes, clench at his thighs, and the sensation just triples when Evan finishes a second afterwards, a sight that Isaac takes in amazement. And when it's all said and done, Evan leans forward to press his forehead against Isaac's, sweat mingling disgustingly with one another, both of them attempting to catch their breaths. They stay like this for a moment, Isaac refusing to look Evan in the eye, and when another second or two passes by, Evan finally manages to roll off Isaac after a couple of practice movements, leaving the two of them lying on their backs on the bed, side by side, plenty fucked and completely naked. Isaac should ask Evan where he can clean himself up and get the fuck out. He's pretty sure the door across the bed is a door to a private bathroom, and it seems so So simple to get up, get rid of the condom on his stick, clean himself up, get dressed to go home, and then never ever think about this again. It was furious, the sex, and maybe that's why it was so good, because Isaac and Evan have so much pent up anger and resentment, and it was easy to channel it all into this night. Isaac overworked and annoyed, and Evan heartbroken and on the rebound, which is all this is really, a hazy way of relieving their tension, their frustrations, and as much fun as it was, Isaac's ready to forget about it as he's sure Evan is. You should probably go, Evan finally pipes up, and oh, thank God Isaac doesn't have to get up in awkward silence and slip away without a goodbye. I should, he agrees, and Isaac means to, he does, but he's literally tied to the comfortable mattress right now, and he's exhausted and sweaty and his hips hurt. So he closes his eyes instead and tries to steady his breath. In a second. Evan grunts in acknowledgement of the statement, and Isaac focuses his hard hearing on the steady bass of the music coming from downstairs, trying to keep himself from drifting off. After a minute, he feels Evan shift beside him on the bed, and when Isaac opens his eyes to turn and look at him, he sees Evan's found his way under the duvet and has turned his back to Isaac, hands tucked under his cheek. Isaac says intelligently. Evan grunts again. Do whatever you want, Isaac. His voice is muffled, which leads Isaac to believe he's digging his face into the mattress. But I'm going to sleep. Isaac rolls his eyes, and when he attempts to sit up, he remembers how drunk he actually is when the room starts spinning. Thinking better of it, he lays back down on the mattress, exhaling shakily. No, he's going to stay here a while, though he was sure that climax would have sobered him up some. It seems that it didn't sober him up enough to walk in a straight line, probably, so he's just gonna... He closes his eyes just so he can find his balance, but he's not going to stay. He's going to get dressed and wake up in his own bed, an event forgotten and never thought about again. He's going to shower in the morning, ignore the soreness that is sure to accompany his back and his hips, and then he's going to go back to disliking Evan and his pretentious, very attractive ass. That's how it's going to happen. Isaac refuses to let this ruin his fucking week, and he refuses to let it shift the balance in his life, make him rethink his entire purpose. It was just sex, a voice inside Isaac's head whispers to him. It was just sex. And yes, that's exactly what it was. Meaningless sex, good for one go, and then useless the next. It was good, but it was over. And just because Evan impressively knew exactly what he was doing for someone dating a woman for over 5 years, it doesn't make him any less of an asshole. Isaac feels his face heat, and then he feels warm all over, like physically warm, because part of the duvet has been thrown over him. He realizes when he opens his eyes, and he looks over to see Evan turning around to give his back to Isaac once again, as if he'd made Isaac's decision for him. He scowls and has half a mind to slap Evan in the head and march out of here naked, but then he's really comfortable on the duvet now, and the pillow hugging his head is very, very soft, and the haze of his drunkenness is finally catching up to him. So he turns on his side, the very same way Jonas has taught him to sleep when he's this drunk, giving his back to Evan's own, and closes his eyes. He'll wake up early, he decides. He'll sneak out of here before he can even realize what happened tonight. It's never been this easy for sleep to take him under. He chalks it up to the exhaustion, and is unable to think too hard on it anyway, because before he knows it, bursts of colors are overtaking the darkness behind his shut eyes, and then he's dreaming about everything and nothing at all.